Let me tell you about the moment my boss tried to destroy my career in front of the entire company. Trevor calls an all-hands meeting on a Tuesday afternoon. Everyone files into the conference room, confused. He starts talking about performance issues, budget concerns, missed deadlines. His voice is calm, almost friendly. Then he says there's someone on the team who isn't pulling their weight. He doesn't say my name. He just looks directly at me. The room goes silent. I feel every pair of eyes turn toward me. My face burns hot. My hands grip the table edge. I've been working 60-hour weeks for 6 months straight. I've been cleaning up Blair's messes, fixing her mistakes, covering her failures. And now I'm the scapegoat. I don't say a word. I just sit there, jaw clenched, heart pounding. Something inside me snaps. Not in a loud, dramatic way. In a quiet, cold way. I decide right then and there that I'm going to burn this place to the ground. Quietly, carefully, and nobody will see it coming until it's too late. My name is Dylan. I'm 34 years old, born and raised in the Midwest. I moved to Boston 3 years ago for what I thought was the opportunity of my life. I work as a project manager at a mid-sized logistics tech company. When I first started, everything felt right. My boss respected me. My team valued my input. I was good at my job, and people noticed. But something shifted about 6 months ago. Workloads doubled overnight. Recognition vanished completely. Blair, who couldn't organize a grocery list, kept failing upward. I kept swallowing the stress, telling myself it would get better. I stayed late fixing problems. I covered for people who didn't deserve it. I told myself hard work would pay off. That's what I was taught growing up. Keep your head down, do good work, and you'll be rewarded. But then came the bonus conversation. The moment everything changed. The moment I realized this company didn't value hard work. They valued silence. 6 months ago, I walked into Trevor's office to ask about the bonus I was promised during my performance review. I've been working there for 2.5 years at that point. My review had been glowing. Trevor told me I was essential to operations. He said compensation adjustments were coming. So I waited. 3 months passed. Then 6. Nothing changed on my paycheck. So I knocked on his door one afternoon. He waved me in with a smile. I sat down and asked directly about my bonus. Trevor leaned back in his chair, fingers laced behind his head, and gave me this smug look I'll never forget. He said, "Dylan, when a company performs, you'll get rewarded. No timeline, no numbers, no metrics, just empty words hanging in the air between us." I nodded, thanked him, and left. I felt like an idiot walking back to my desk. But that conversation planted something in my mind. A question. If the company wasn't performing, why wasn't it? And what would I find if I started paying attention? Let me tell you how people like Blair stay employed, while people like me get blamed for their failures. Blair is the golden child. She's loud, confident, and completely incompetent. About 4 months ago, she was assigned to lead a critical client project. High stakes, tight deadline. Within 2 weeks, she'd already missed 3 deliverables. She didn't understand half the technical requirements. So what did she do? She started dumping tasks on me through Slack. Late-night messages asking me to just quickly review something that would take me 4 hours to fix. During team check-ins, she'd present my work like it was hers. She'd use phrases I wrote, slides I designed, solutions I figured out. And Trevor ate it up. He praised her constantly, called her a rising star. Meanwhile, I was drowning in her workload on top of my own. But here's the thing. I didn't confront her. I didn't complain to Trevor. Instead, I started screenshotting everything. Every Slack message, every missed deadline, every task she handed off to me. I created a folder on my personal computer and backed it all up. If they wanted to play games, I'd play too. But I'd play to win. The paper trail became my obsession. Every time Blair sent me a desperate message at midnight begging me to fix her work, I saved it. Every time she took credit during a meeting, I noted the date and time. I forwarded important emails to my personal account. I saved project files with timestamps. I documented every single lie, every false claim, every stolen idea. I stopped being the helpful coworker who silently cleaned up her messes. Now I was a ghost in the system, watching, recording, building my case. Nobody noticed the change. I still smiled in meetings. I still hit my deadlines. I just stopped going out of my way to save Blair from herself. And you know what I realized? The company had no idea how much it relied on me. All those late nights I spent fixing back-end issues that nobody saw. All those reports I prepped that Trevor presented as his own ideas. All those times I coached junior team members because the actual managers were too busy. I held the entire operation together with duct tape and caffeine. So I started to wonder, what would happen if I just stopped? I decided to run a test. One Friday afternoon, I noticed a small error in a data report that would cause problems on Monday. Normally, I'd stay late and fix it. This time, I closed my laptop at 5 and went home. Monday morning, I came into pure chaos. Blair was panicking, sending messages in all caps. Trevor was running around demanding to know what went wrong. They spent 3 hours trying to figure out what happened. Finally, Trevor called me into his office. I walked in calmly and asked what he needed. He explained the situation, clearly frustrated. I looked at the error, saw exactly what the problem was, and fixed it in 10 minutes. Trevor thanked me, but there was something different in his eyes. Relief, sure, but also dependence. That's when I knew for certain. They needed me more than I needed them. I was the load-bearing wall in a house that was ready to collapse. And I'd just proven it. From that moment on, I knew I had power. Real power. Not the kind that comes from a fancy title or a corner office. The kind that comes from being irreplaceable. Around this time, I met Julia. She just started in the finance department, brought in to help with budget reporting. She was sharp, careful, and paid attention to details most people missed. One day in the break room, I casually mentioned some expense inconsistencies I'd noticed on a project Blair managed. Invoices that didn't match deliverables. Budget overruns with no explanation. Julia raised an eyebrow. She stirred her coffee slowly and said, "You're not the only one noticing weird stuff." We started talking more after that. Carefully, never in the office. We'd grab coffee at the shop down the street or chat during lunch walks. Julia had access to financial records I couldn't see, and I had project documentation she couldn't access. Together, we started putting together a picture that made both of us uncomfortable. Ghost projects with fake deliverables. Budget approvals that went through without proper oversight. Vendors getting paid for work that was never actually completed. And all of it had one thing in common. Blair's signature, approved by Trevor. Julia looked at me one afternoon and said quietly, "We could trigger a financial review. Anonymously. I needed access. Real access to the system. Not just the project files I normally worked with, but the performance logs, the budget reports, the internal communications." So I did something risky. I volunteered to help Trevor optimize our project reporting. I told him I wanted to streamline our processes, make everything more efficient. Trevor loved it. He thought I was finally trying to prove myself after that all-hands humiliation. He gave me access to everything. Full visibility into project performance logs, budget allocations, team communications. I spent the next 2 weeks pulling data. Every lie Blair told. Every missed milestone Trevor covered up. Every false report submitted to clients. I had it all. Dates, times, dollar amounts. The evidence was overwhelming. But I couldn't just dump it on someone's desk. That would make me look vindictive, like I had an axe to grind. No, I needed to be strategic. Patient. I needed the evidence to surface naturally, like an audit finding issues on its own. I had the receipts. Now I just needed the right timing. I started laying traps. Small, quiet ones that nobody would notice until it was too late. In team meetings, I'd ask Blair questions I already knew the answers to. Simple things about project timelines or client requirements. She'd answer confidently, and her answers would contradict the documentation. I'd nod and smile, never correcting her, but I'd note it down later. In Slack conversations, I'd ask for clarification on decisions she claimed to have made. She'd give me completely different explanations than what was in the original emails. All of it recorded, all of it time-stamped. Trevor kept signing off on everything without checking. He trusted Blair completely. Or maybe he just didn't care enough to verify anything she said. Either way, his negligence was creating a paper trail that would eventually bury both of them. I watched it happen in real time. Every false approval, every ignored red flag, Every time, he chose convenience over accountability. They were building their own funeral pyre, and I was just standing back, holding the matches. Julia made her move in early October. She had a contact not just in finance, but someone who reported directly to the board. A liaison who reviewed quarterly reports before they went to investors. Julia passed along a sanitized version of our findings. Not a formal accusation, just some concerning patterns she'd noticed in the budget reports. Questions about expense justifications, irregularities in vendor payments. She framed it as a junior analyst wanting to make sure everything was accurate before the board presentation. The seed was planted carefully, professionally. 1 week later, the company announced an independent audit. The email came from the CEO's office on a Monday morning. Subject line, commitment to financial excellence. They called it a routine review, something they did periodically to ensure compliance and optimize operations. But I knew better. Julia sent me a text that afternoon. Just 3 words, here we go. I deleted the message and went back to work. My face stayed neutral, my routine unchanged. But inside, I felt something that had been dormant for months finally wake up. It felt like justice slowly grinding in motion. The office atmosphere changed overnight. Trevor canceled our usual team lunches. Blair stopped delegating tasks as freely. Everyone suddenly looked busy all the time, even when they weren't actually doing anything productive. You could feel the tension in every meeting, every hallway conversation. People who normally joked around were quiet now. Paranoid. The auditors arrived on a Wednesday. 2 men and 1 woman, carrying leather briefcases and wearing expressions that gave away nothing. They set up in an empty conference room and started requesting documents. The thing about an independent audit is that it's thorough. They don't just look at the numbers on the surface. They compare invoices to deliverables, timelines to outcomes, budget requests to actual work completed. They interview team members. They check email trails. They verify everything. I kept my head down and my hands clean. I showed up on time, did my job, answered questions honestly when asked. I gave them nothing to suspect, but I also didn't volunteer anything. I just waited, because I knew what they'd find. It was only a matter of time. 2 weeks into the audit, the internal panic became obvious. I'd walk past Trevor's office and hear him on phone calls, his voice strained. Blair stopped making eye contact with people in hallways. One afternoon, I overheard her in the stairwell, accusing someone of throwing her under the bus. She sounded desperate, cornered. Trevor started having closed-door meetings every hour. With the auditors, with HR, with the CFO. His door was shut more than it was open. I made another backup of everything I had. All my documentation, all the screenshots, all the forwarded emails. I saved it to 3 different locations. An external hard drive, a cloud service, and a USB drive I kept in my apartment. Just in case they started looking my way. Just in case someone decided to make me the scapegoat again. But they never did. Because by then, the auditors were focused on something much bigger than one project manager. They were unraveling an entire system of negligence and fraud. Blair made her move in late October. She submitted a formal performance complaint about me to HR. The complaint claimed I'd been unreliable, missed deadlines, and failed to support team initiatives. It was dated and signed, with specific examples of my supposed failures. When HR called me in to discuss it, I stayed calm. I listened to every accusation. Then I pulled out my phone, opened my personal files, and handed them documentation for every hour I'd worked in the past 6 months. Every task I'd completed. Every deadline I'd hit. Every project I'd saved. And then I showed them the Slack messages where Blair had dumped her work on me at the last minute. The timestamps where she took credit for my ideas. The email chains where she misrepresented project status to clients. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't get emotional. I just handed them the truth. The HR representative's face changed as she scrolled through the evidence. She thanked me for my time and said they'd be in touch. I walked out of that office feeling lighter than I had in months. 1 week later, the auditors pulled me aside. They asked if I had a few minutes to discuss some project documentation. My heart rate spiked, but I nodded calmly. We sat down in that conference room, and they laid out spreadsheets in front of me. Budget reports for projects I'd managed. They pointed to several inconsistencies. Line items that didn't match deliverables. Expenses approved for work that had never been completed. Then they pulled out my version of the same files. The ones I'd submitted through proper channels. The ones that told a completely different story. They asked me to explain the differences. I walked them through every discrepancy. I explained how I'd documented the actual work completed versus what was reported. How I'd raised concerns internally and been ignored. How certain reports had been altered after I submitted them. They listened carefully, taking notes. Then one of them asked the question I've been waiting for. Would you be willing to go on record with this information? I looked at him, then at the other two auditors, and I said yes. Over the next 3 days, I gave them everything. Every manipulated report. Every lie told to clients. Every budget overrun that was covered up or blamed on external factors. Every instance of Blair taking credit for work she didn't do. Every time Trevor signed off on something without verifying the details. I kept my testimony professional. Clinical. I never insulted anyone personally. I never claimed malicious intent. I just showed them the evidence and let it speak for itself. I watched their faces as they realized the scope of what had been happening. This wasn't just poor management. This was systematic misrepresentation of company performance. And it went right to the top of our department. They asked me why I hadn't come forward sooner. I told them the truth. I tried. I raised concerns with my direct supervisor. I was shut down every time. Eventually, I realized speaking up would only make me a target. So I stopped speaking and started documenting instead. They thanked me for my honesty. And then they told me to keep everything I'd shared confidential. Blair didn't show up to work the following Monday. No email, no Slack message, just an empty desk and a calendar full of meetings she didn't attend. By Tuesday, HR sent out a brief email. Blair Henderson has resigned to pursue other opportunities. We wish her well in her future endeavors. But Julia heard the real story from someone in finance. Blair had been let go for cause. Misrepresentation of deliverables. Falsification of project reports. Expense fraud. They'd given her the option to resign quietly or be terminated publicly. She chose resignation. I felt a strange mix of emotions reading that email. Relief. Vindication. But also something heavier. I never wanted to destroy someone's career. I just wanted accountability. I wanted the truth to matter. But watching Blair's name disappear from the company directory still felt surreal. She was gone. Just like that. But Trevor was still here. And I knew his turn was coming. Trevor started disappearing from meetings. At first, it was 1 or 2 skip-outs. Then it became a pattern. He'd send last-minute emails saying he was tied up with executive business. His office doors stayed closed most days. When he did show up, he looked exhausted. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by something that looked like fear. The auditors were meeting directly with the board now. Twice a week, sometimes more. I'd see them walking through the executive floor, carrying thick folders and wearing serious expressions. Word spread quickly through the office. People started speculating in hushed conversations by the coffee machine. What were they finding? How bad was it? Who was going to take the fall? Slack channels went quiet whenever I joined them. I wasn't invisible anymore. Now I was something different. Something people avoided. They didn't know what I knew, but they sensed I was connected to whatever was happening behind those closed doors. Julia texted me one afternoon in mid-November. Just 2 words, it's happening. The emergency all-hands meeting was called on a Thursday. Everyone filed into the main conference room, whispering anxiously. The CEO wasn't there. Instead, the COO stood at the front with HR leadership. Her face was professional but tense. She thanked everyone for their hard work and dedication. She talked about the company's commitment to integrity and transparency. Then she got to the point. Trevor was leaving the company, effective immediately. No grand speech. No thank you video. No farewell party. Just a clean, corporate exit announcement. She said the leadership team would be restructured, and more information would come in the following weeks. She opened the floor for questions. The room stayed silent. Nobody knew what to ask. After a long, uncomfortable pause, she dismissed us. I watched everyone file out, confused and nervous. But I wasn't surprised. I'd already seen the email 2 days earlier. A message buried in my spam folder from an external auditor, thanking me for my cooperation in their investigation. Trevor was done, and I'd helped make it happen. 2 days after Trevor's departure, I got pulled into a meeting with the COO and the head of HR. They asked me to sit down, offer me water, and started talking about my future with the company. They said they'd seen my work. They knew what I'd contributed, especially during the audit. They were impressed with my professionalism and my commitment to accuracy. Then they made me an offer. Take over Trevor's role on an interim basis. Lead the team. Help them rebuild trust and fix the operational issues. Oh, and there'd be a significant raise involved. 40% more than I was making, plus the bonus I was originally promised. They slid a folder across the table with the compensation details and timeline. I looked at the numbers. 6 months ago, I would have jumped at this opportunity. But now things were different. I looked up at the COO and smiled politely. And then I said no. Their expressions shifted from confidence to confusion. They asked if there was something they could do to change my mind. I told them the truth. I'd already accepted another offer. 3 months ago, right around the time the audit started, I'd quietly started applying to other companies. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't post about it on LinkedIn. I just sent out resumes, did interviews during lunch breaks, and waited. A competitor reached out in September. They'd heard about my work through industry contacts. They offered me a senior project manager role with better pay, better hours, and a team that actually valued accountability. I accepted their offer in October. I've been waiting for the right moment to resign, and this seemed like perfect timing. I handed them my formal resignation letter. 2 weeks' notice. Clean and professional. I didn't burn a single bridge. I thanked them for the opportunity and said I was moving on to new challenges. The COO looked stunned. HR asked again if there was anything they could offer. Better title? More money? I shook my head. Too late, I said. And I meant it. My last 2 weeks at the company were strange. People treated me differently. Some avoided me completely, like I was bad luck. Others suddenly wanted to grab coffee and catch up, probably fishing for information about what I knew. I didn't give them anything. I finished my projects, documented my processes, and trained my replacement. I stayed professional right up until my final day. On my last Friday, a few coworkers threw me a small goodbye lunch. It was awkward but kind. They gave me a gift card and said nice things about working with me. I thanked them sincerely. These are good people caught in a bad system. As I walked out of the building that evening, carrying a small box of personal items, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Pure, uncomplicated relief. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't plotting. I was just done, and it felt incredible. I drove home in silence, windows down, breathing in the cool November air. I was free. I heard things after I left. Not officially, but through the grapevine. Julia kept me updated occasionally, though we both knew to be careful. The audit findings triggered a deeper investigation. Legal got involved. Several senior leaders were questioned about their oversight responsibilities. Some board members were furious, demanding accountability for how things had gotten so bad. Others wanted to sweep it under the rug to avoid public scandal. Employee morale hit rock bottom. Half the team started looking for new jobs. 2 more managers quit within a month of Trevor's departure. The company tried to spin it as a positive restructuring, but everyone knew the truth. The culture was poisoned, and it would take years to recover. Meanwhile, I was thriving in my new company. I worked with people who trusted me from day one, people who respected my time and valued my input. I got home before 6 most evenings. I slept through the night without work anxiety. I laughed again during team meetings. I felt like myself again. Looking back now, people ask me if I feel guilty, if I regret what I did. The answer is no, not even a little bit. I didn't fabricate evidence. I didn't lie. I didn't sabotage anyone who didn't sabotage themselves. All I did was document the truth and make sure the right people saw it. Blair destroyed her own career by stealing credit and lying to clients. Trevor destroyed his by enabling her and ignoring accountability. I just made sure their actions had consequences. Some people call that revenge. I call it justice. There's a difference. Revenge is about hurting someone because they hurt you. Justice is about making sure the truth comes out, even when it's uncomfortable. I chose the second path, and I'd do it again. Because the alternative was staying silent while good people suffered and bad people prospered. The alternative was letting a broken system keep breaking people. I wasn't willing to accept that. Not anymore. My new company just promoted me. 6 months in, and I'm already leading a division-wide initiative. My boss pulled me aside last week and told me I'm exactly the kind of leader they want to build around. Someone who takes ownership, who speaks up when something's wrong, who values integrity over politics. It felt surreal hearing those words. A year ago, I was sitting in Trevor's office being told my bonus was contingent on the company's performance. A performance I was single-handedly holding together. Now I'm being recognized for the work I actually do, not the work someone else steals credit for, not the long hours and silent suffering, the actual value I bring. And you know what? It feels normal, like this is how it should have been all along. I'm not special. I'm just someone who refused to let mediocrity win, who refused to let liars prosper while honest people got crushed. And that refusal changed everything. People say revenge is about payback, about getting even, about making someone hurt the way they hurt you. But they're wrong. Real revenge isn't about destruction. It's about walking away and thriving without them. It's about proving that your silence was louder than their noise, that your integrity outlasted their manipulation, that you didn't need their validation to know your worth. When Trevor told me I'd be paid when the company performs, he thought he was putting me in my place. He thought he was teaching me to be grateful for whatever scraps they threw my way. Instead, he taught me that my value wasn't determined by people who couldn't see it, that I didn't owe loyalty to a system that never valued me in the first place. The audit revealed what I already knew. My work was the only thing performing. And when I walked away, their house of cards collapsed. So here's what I learned. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to fight dirty to win. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is document the truth, step back, and let karma do its job. When the company finally performed, it was because I walked away,